Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be exploring Think Like a Billionaire, Become a Billionaire. This book by Scott Anderson really breaks down these surprisingly simple principles that he says can totally change your financial life.
Yeah. It's not some get-rich-quick scheme. It's about shifting your mindset and actually, adopting these practical strategies.
So Anderson starts off, he really challenges us to think differently about money. He says that most people see money as a way to buy things, but the wealthy, they see it as a way to build even more wealth. So how does that perspective actually play out, in the real world?
Okay. Imagine you get a $5,000 raise, right? Most people, that money might disappear into just slightly nicer dinners, maybe a couple more vacations, a little bit fancier car. It just kind of improves their lifestyle incrementally, but it doesn't really change their financial situation.
They're still stuck in that cycle of working, getting a paycheck, spending it.
Exactly. Now imagine someone with a billionaire mindset gets that same $5,000 raise. They're going to see that as an opportunity to invest, to grow their wealth, to create more income-generating assets.
So instead of buying a slightly nicer car, maybe they'd invest in a stock that could double, could triple in value.
Or even use it to start a side business or put a down payment on a rental property, right?
Yeah.
They see money as a seed that can grow into more money. It's like that parable in the Bible about the talents. The one who invested their talents was rewarded. The one who buried his talent out of fear was reprimanded.
So it's not just about having more money, it's about having a different relationship with money. Sometimes, though, it feels like the wealthy, they live in a different world, they speak a language. Most of us we don't get it.
Right. Anderson, he uses this analogy of a French menu. The food, the abundance is there. But you need to understand the language to order it. The wealthy, they've learned the language of investing, of real estate, business, finance. They understand the concepts, the strategies, even the risks in a way that most people don't.
So how do we learn this language? I remember Anderson, he tells this story about passing on a property because he didn't understand the opportunity. But then he has this aha moment. He figures out the lingo and then ends up making a huge profit on a similar deal later on.
Yeah. It shows how expanding your financial literacy can open up these possibilities. And Anderson stresses that we can learn this language through reading, studying, taking courses, even surrounding ourselves with people who are already fluent in it. It's immersing yourself in a new culture.
So we need a clear vision for our financial future, and we need to develop this financial literacy so we can actually put our money to work for us in a smart way. But having a vision, it isn't always enough, is it? Sometimes we know what we want, but we struggle with self-control.
That's where the rubber meets the road. Anderson, he talks about how vision actually creates self-control. She shares a story from when he was a kid. He was saving up for this video game, and he was so focused on that goal that he just became incredibly disciplined with his money.
I can relate to that. When I was saving up for a trip to Europe, I was like a budgeting ninja. We've all had those moments where we've suddenly become good at saving because we really wanted something.
Exactly. That's the power of having a vision. It fuels our self-discipline. And Anderson, he offers a workbook to help readers actually define their vision, create a plan to achieve it. He even connects this to a scripture about, overcoming the world, emphasizing this kind of spiritual dimension to financial success,
Interesting. He doesn't shy away from connecting his faith to his financial strategies. Speaking of faith, he talks a lot about the importance of giving, but he presents it as more than just a nice thing to do, right?
Right. He argues that giving, it's actually a strategic part of attracting wealth.
Yeah.
He believes that, when we're generous with what we have, God blesses us with even more. It's not about manipulating God. It's about aligning ourselves with the principle of abundance.
He tells this compelling story about a woman. She has just this tiny amount of oil, but through faith and generosity, she experiences this miraculous, multiplication of her resources.
Yeah, it's a great illustration of how giving can unlock unexpected blessings. And Anderson, he emphasizes the importance of tithing. Giving a portion of our income back to our church or a chosen charity, he says it's like a foundational practice for financial success.
So giving isn't just a moral obligation, it's like an investment. Okay, so we need to think differently about money, have a clear vision, learn this language of wealth, and be generous. It's a lot. What else does Anderson say about how we actually bridge the gap between where we are now and where we want to be financially?
He believes in the power of commitment. and learning from mistakes. He's pretty open about his own failures in the past, admitting that he quit on ventures before because he just didn't have the dedication.
He's saying we got to be all in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He even has a section in his workbook called Life Lessons. He wants readers to reflect on their past failures and learn from them, use them to guide their future decisions. Think about a time when you failed at something. It probably stung at the time, but looking back, did you learn something valuable?
Absolutely. Some of my biggest failures have turned into some of my biggest successes. I think sometimes we're so scared of failing that we don't even try.
That's the trap Anderson wants us to avoid. He wants us to see failures as stepping stones to success.
So we've got a vision, we're committed, we're learning from our mistakes, and we're giving generously. What about the nuts and bolts of managing money? Does Anderson have any specific budgeting advice?
He's not a big fan of the traditional budget. He says they can be, limiting. They can prevent us from reaching our full financial potential.
Really? I thought budgeting was rule number one in personal finance. What's his alternative?
He suggests what he calls a vision-based approach. Instead of just trying to stay under a budget, he says focus on your long-term goals and make a plan that supports those aspirations.
So it's about allocating our resources in a way that matches our vision.
Yeah, precisely. And he breaks his alternative budget into key components: income, expenses, tithes, offerings, and, this is key, investments.
Investing is a non-negotiable.
Absolutely. He believes that even if you're starting small, consistently setting aside money to invest is crucial. It's about shifting your mindset from scarcity to abundance.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's be honest, sometimes it feels like there just isn't enough to go around. How can we even think about investing when we're struggling to pay the bills?
Well, that's where the power of self-control comes in. Anderson argues that even small changes in our spending habits can free up a lot of money over a lifetime, money that can be used for investing.
He uses the example of giving up soda, right? Which most people probably think is a pretty minor expense.
Exactly. He calculated that if you took the money you'd normally spend on a daily soda and invested it over, say, 55 years, assuming even a modest rate of return, you could end up with millions of dollars.
Whoa! I never thought of skipping soda as an investment strategy.
And it doesn't have to be soda. It's about finding any small, seemingly insignificant habits that are actually costing you thousands each year.
Like those daily lattes, those subscription boxes that we never really use.
Right. Anderson wants us to rethink our everyday spending and consider, the potential value of that money over time. What could you achieve if you redirected that money toward your goals?
I bet a lot of people would be surprised how much money they could actually free up if they took a good hard look. But how do we actually change those habits? It's easy to talk about cutting back, but doing it is hard.
Well, Anderson, he offers some practical tips. One strategy is to, gradually reduce your consumption. So instead of going cold turkey on soda, maybe cut back to one a day, then every other day, and so on.
So easing yourself into it.
Exactly. He also suggests finding substitutes. Instead of grabbing a soda, maybe have some water with lemon or a piece of fruit.
And he talks about having an accountability partner or a support group even to help you stay motivated.
Right. Recognizing you don't have to do it all alone. There's strength in numbers, and a community can make a big difference in your success.
So we're thinking differently about money, we're developing good habits, we're investing consistently. What else does Anderson recommend for attracting wealth and achieving financial success?
He talks a lot about preparation, being ready to grab those opportunities when they pop up.
Okay, but what does that actually look like? What do you do?
He has this incredible story about buying 50,000 splats. Those sticky toys you throw at the wall. He bought 50,000 of them, even though he had no clue how he'd sell them.
50,000 splats. That's a bold move. I'd be terrified to do something like that without a plan. What was he thinking?
That's the point. He was getting ready for an opportunity that he didn't even know was coming yet. He got a deal, and he trusted that he would figure the rest out later.
Wow. That's a lot of faith. Did he end up selling them?
He did, and not how he expected. That big purchase led him to all these unexpected connections and actually helped him build a successful toy company.
So it's about being open to those chances even if you don't have all the answers yet.
Exactly. It's about having the courage to take those calculated risks and being okay stepping out of your comfort zone.
That's tough, though. What if you fail?
Anderson sees failure as just part of the process, a stepping stone to success, not the end of the line.
So how do you develop that kind of mindset? How do you get past the fear of failing and embrace the unknown?
That's a question we'll tackle in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, now I'm on the edge of my seat. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore Anderson's perspective on failure, risk-taking, and the law of probability.
So remember that cliffhanger about failure? Well, Anderson has a really interesting take on it. He actually believes that embracing failure, it's crucial for success.
Okay. I'm intrigued, but I gotta say I'm a little skeptical. I mean, who really enjoys failing? Nobody likes to fail, right?
He's not saying we should aim to fail, but he does see it as a part of the journey, especially when we're trying new things, pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone, going after those big goals.
So how does he suggest we deal with failure then?
He uses this really cool analogy, the law of probability. He actually has this dice game he uses to illustrate this. So imagine you roll a single die. You've got a 1 in 6 chance of rolling any specific number right. But the more you roll that die, the higher the chances become that you'll eventually roll the number you want.
So it's about increasing your chances of success by just taking more shots, even if some of them miss.
Exactly. He argues that every time we try something new, every time we step out of that comfort zone, every time we take a calculated risk, we're essentially rolling the dice. And the more we roll, the higher our chances of hitting that jackpot.
That makes sense. It's kind of like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? But I think a lot of people get so discouraged by those early failures that they just give up before they really have a chance.
That's exactly the trap that Anderson wants us to avoid. He even shares a personal story about asking girls to dance when he was younger. He remembers getting rejected over and over again, but he kept putting himself out there, and eventually he started getting more yeses.
That's a great example, and it's something that, I think everyone can relate to on some level. Rejection is tough. Whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, it's just part of the game, though.
And Anderson believed that those early rejections, those early failures, they actually make those successes that come later even sweeter. They help you build resilience, you learn valuable lessons, and you really start to appreciate the journey more.
So we're embracing failure, we're taking risks, and we're trusting that law of probability. What else does he recommend for people who are starting or running a business?
He encourages us to start small, scale up gradually, and reinvest profits along the way.
I remember he used the chimichanga business as an example, right? Like instead of jumping right into opening a fancy restaurant, he suggests you start small, like maybe with a food cart at a local event, learn from that experience, and then expand as you go.
Yeah. He thinks that approach helps minimize risk while allowing you to continuously learn and improve.
So it's about testing the waters before you just dive in.
Exactly. And by starting small, you get valuable feedback, refine your product or service, and build a loyal customer base before you start making those really big investments.
And what about reinvesting profits? Why is that so important?
Anderson believes that it's essential for exponential growth. Instead of spending those early earnings, he says you should plow them back into the business to fuel expansion, more marketing, product development, things like that.
It's like they say, it takes money to make money.
Exactly. And Anderson thinks that this approach, when you combine it with a long-term vision and that unwavering commitment, it can really help you beat the odds when it comes to building a successful business.
Okay, now this next part I think is where things get a little tricky. Anderson talks about good debt. He argues that wealthy people, they actually use debt strategically to generate more wealth.
It can be tough to wrap your head around if you've always been taught to avoid debt. But Anderson, he makes a distinction between what he calls good debt and bad debt. And he points out how good debt can actually create big opportunities for growth.
I remember he talks about refinancing his house and then using that equity for $1 million investment.
Yep. It's a move that actually increased his debt in the short term, but it also allowed him to take advantage of this lucrative opportunity and ultimately see a much bigger return.
I think a lot of people just struggle with that idea because they've always seen debt as a negative thing.
That's understandable. But Anderson says that debt can be a very powerful tool when you use it strategically. He defines good debt as debt that's used to get something that will make money for you, something that creates income or goes up in value.
So like investing in rental properties or a business that generates revenue.
Exactly. Those things can potentially generate enough income to cover the debt payments and even make you a profit on top of that. Now, he contrasts that with bad debt that's used to buy things that don't make you money, like a fancy car or an expensive vacation. Those things usually don't generate any income, and in fact, can actually put you further into debt.
So it's not about never going into debt, it's about knowing when it makes sense and using it to create opportunities.
Right. And Anderson is very clear that Managing debt well takes planning, research, and a solid understanding of the risks involved. It's not something to jump into without thinking carefully.
He also talks about the importance of integrity and how it relates to your credit score.
He believes that your credit score, it reflects your commitment to honoring your financial obligations, and that it can really affect your ability to get loans and get good interest rates.
That's like your financial reputation, right?
Exactly. And Anderson argues that building a solid credit history is essential if you want to attract opportunities and build lasting wealth. He even breaks down the difference in cost between having excellent credit versus poor credit. He shows how you could save millions of dollars over your lifetime just by having a good credit score.
That's a strong argument for being responsible with your finances.
Definitely. And he gives some practical steps for improving your credit score, like paying your bills on time, keeping your credit card balances low, and checking your credit report regularly for any errors.
It sounds like he's pushing for a whole picture view of financial health, focusing on both your mindset and practical strategies.
Absolutely. He believes that true financial success requires a combination of vision, discipline, knowledge, and integrity.
Okay, so we've talked about embracing failure, using debt strategically, building a good credit score. What else does he say is important on the journey to becoming financially abundant?
He spends a good amount of time talking about problem solving. He says successful people, they see problems as challenges to overcome, not roadblocks.
Yeah, I've heard that before. It's about seeing those obstacles as opportunities to grow.
Exactly. He tells this really intense story about having to cut a rope during a mountain climbing accident. It highlights how far successful people are willing to go to solve problems and get what they want.
Wow, that's a pretty intense example.
It is. But it makes you think about the importance of being resilient and being a good problem solver.
So how do you build that problem-solving mindset?
Anderson says it all starts with changing your perspective. Instead of seeing problems as impossible to overcome, you need to see them as chances to grow and come up with new solutions.
He uses that term AQ, right, to describe your problem-solving skills.
That's right. AQ stands for adversity quotient. He thinks having a high AQ is essential if you're going to navigate all the challenges that come with trying to be successful.
So it's not about avoiding problems completely, it's about being able to deal with them. What are some things you can do to get better at that?
Anderson recommends breaking big problems down into smaller, easier steps. He also suggests finding mentors or advisors who've been through similar challenges before.
So tapping into other people's knowledge and experience.
Exactly. And he wants us to focus on finding solutions, on what we can control, and to take action instead of just getting stuck on the problem.
So less, why me? More, okay, how do I fix this?
Exactly. He believes that this problem-solving mindset, combined with faith and perseverance, can help you overcome anything.
All right, so we're embracing failure. We're using debt in a smart way. We're working on our problem-solving skills, and we're building that resilient mindset. What else does Anderson recommend for those of us who are on this path to becoming a billionaire?
He spends a big chunk of the book talking about time management.
That's interesting. I think most people connect wealth with having a lot of money, but you're saying it's also about how you use your time.
Absolutely. Anderson says time is your most valuable asset, even more valuable than money. Successful people are very intentional about how they use their time. He breaks it down into wasted time versus dream time.
What's the difference?
Dream time is time that you're using on purpose for things that are in line with your goals and dreams. It's the time you spend working on your business, getting better at things, building relationships, and doing things you're passionate about.
And wasted time.
That's the time we all spend on stuff that doesn't really move us forward, like scrolling through social media forever, binge watching TV, or doing things that just leave you feeling drained and unfulfilled.
So it's about being aware of how you're spending your time and making sure it matches what you want to achieve.
Exactly. He even suggests you try tracking your time for a whole day just to see where it all goes.
I've tried that before, and it's amazing and a little scary how much time you can waste without even realizing it.
It really highlights that time is limited. We all have the same 24 hours, but what you choose to do with them is what makes the difference.
So how do we get better at using our time?
Anderson gives you a system for making a daily schedule that prioritizes that dream time. He says figure out when you're most productive and block off those hours for focused work on your most important tasks.
Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And during those times, he says get rid of distractions. Turn off notifications, put your phone on airplane mode, find a quiet spot to work.
And what about all the time outside of those focused work blocks? What should we do with that?
He wants you to be mindful of how you're using that time too, to make sure it aligns with your goals and values.
So it's not about working nonstop. It's about finding a balance between work, rest, relationships, and things you enjoy.
Right. He believes that if you're intentional about your time and make sure your actions are matching your vision, you can create a life that's both successful and fulfilling.
It sounds like he's suggesting we take a holistic view of success, one that includes not just our money goals, but also our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being.
Exactly. He thinks true prosperity means having abundance in all areas of your life.
Okay, we've talked about so much, from accepting failure to using debt wisely to managing our time well. But there's one big part of the puzzle we haven't really talked about yet: attracting wealth instead of chasing after it.
That's right. And Anderson believes it's a fundamental concept when it comes to achieving true financial freedom.
I'm curious, what does he mean by attracting wealth instead of chasing it?
He gives this great analogy: deer hunting. Imagine you're trying to catch a deer. You could run all over the forest chasing after every deer you see, but you're probably going to end up tired and empty-handed.
Okay, I think I see where this is going.
Now, a skilled hunter, they know how deer behave and what they like. They make a spot that will attract deer, so it's easier to get what they're after.
So it's about setting yourself up for success instead of trying to force it.
Exactly. Anderson says we could do the same thing with wealth. Instead of going after every single opportunity that pops up, we should be focusing on making ourselves the kind of person wealth is naturally drawn to.
So what makes someone attractive to wealth then? What are those qualities?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's something we'll dive into in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, I can't wait to learn more about this deer hunting approach to wealth. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll find out what Anderson says about becoming a magnet for abundance. All right, we're back, and I'm ready to hear more about this idea attracting wealth instead of chasing after it. You really left us hanging at the end of part 2.
Well, it all starts with changing how we see wealth. Instead of thinking of it as something outside of us that we got to constantly chase, Anderson says we should work on becoming the kind of person that wealth is drawn to.
So it's about changing from the inside out, not just focusing on the external stuff.
Exactly. It's about building the mindset, the habits, the character that lines up with abundance.
That makes sense. But what does that actually look like? What are those traits that make someone attractive to wealth?
Anderson talks about a lot of different qualities, but one of the big ones is excellence. He believes that trying to be excellent in everything we do, our work, relationships, personal growth, creates this magnetic energy that brings opportunities and resources our way.
I remember he uses the story of Joseph in the Bible. Even when he was unfairly imprisoned, he still stayed committed to doing his best.
Right. And because Joseph was dedicated to doing his best, no matter what, he ended up getting promoted and became very influential.
It shows that how we act and how hard we work matters, even when we think nobody's paying attention.
Exactly. And Anderson believes that developing that habit of doing your best, even on the small things, can impact your whole life. It can attract favor, opportunities, and resources.
So it's not about being perfect all the time. It's about trying to be the best version of yourself in whatever you do.
Yes. It doesn't mean you got to be a workaholic or ignore your personal life. It's about finding balance and aiming for excellence in the areas that are important to you.
Anderson also talks a lot about community, surrounding yourself with people who are supportive, who inspire you, and challenge you to grow.
He thinks the people we hang out with have a huge impact on our thoughts, beliefs, and how happy we are.
He even says that being around negative people or people who are always complaining can actually drain your energy and hold you back.
He's not saying ditch your friends and family who are going through tough times, but he does say to be mindful of who you're spending your time with and try to build relationships that are good for both people and help you grow.
So it's about finding your tribe, the people who get you and who push you to be better.
Right. The right community can give you amazing support, encouragement, and keep you accountable, especially when things get difficult.
And he also emphasizes the importance of giving back, using your success to help others and make the world a better place.
He thinks generosity is a key part of attracting abundance. When you give freely and with a good heart, you create this positive energy flow, and it opens you up to receive even more blessings.
It's like the more you give, the more you get.
Right. And Anderson points out that giving doesn't always have to be about money. You can give your time, your skills, your energy, or resources to causes that you care about.
So it's about living a life with a purpose, using your success to make a real difference.
Yes. He believes that when what you do is connected to a bigger purpose, you tap into this source of abundance that's way bigger than anything you could do on your own.
It's about understanding that true wealth isn't just about money, but also about feeling fulfilled, having strong relationships, and knowing your purpose.
There's this great quote from the book that really captures this. He says, "People spend their whole life chasing money and never catching it. I decided at a very young age to become someone that attracted money. I want money to chase me."
That's a powerful statement. It's about changing your whole mindset, from feeling like there's not enough to believing that you can attract abundance.
Exactly. He thinks this shift in thinking is essential for achieving true financial freedom and living a life full of purpose.
So if you want to bring wealth and abundance into your life, you need to work on doing your best, building a solid group of friends and mentors, and living a generous life with a clear purpose.
Anderson offers tons of practical tips and strategies in his book. I think these are some of the most important things for anyone who wants to start attracting wealth instead of always chasing after it.
This has been such an amazing deep dive into the world of billionaires. We've learned so much about how they think, the habits they build, and how they strategically use things like time and debt to their advantage.
It's been really eye-opening to explore these concepts and see how simple many of these strategies actually are.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from all of this?
The most important message is that becoming a billionaire isn't just about stacking up money. It's about having a mindset of abundance, excellence, and generosity. It's about making choices on purpose, taking action consistently, and making sure your life reflects your values. And it's about believing that with the right mindset and the right tools, we're all capable of achieving amazing things.
Well said. That's such a great reminder that success is possible for anyone who's willing to put in the work and follow these principles. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Think Like a Billionaire, Become a Billionaire. We hope you've picked up some valuable tips that'll help you attract wealth and abundance into your own life.
It's been a pleasure talking about this with you.
Until next time, keep dreaming big, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for excellence in all that you do. We'll catch you on our next deep dive.